In this demonstration, I'll be showing you a high-level overview conceptually of what a staff requisition, onboarding, probation, termination workflows could look like in your organisation, utilising file-bound platform, including eForms and workflow. Now, I should note, and a bit of a disclaimer at the start, this is obviously an overview, so the system or platform would be tailored to suit the needs of your organisation as far as forms and workflows went. Initially, to initiate this workflow, we actually use an eForm to do so. So we see here we've got our staff requisition form. Now I would go and fill this form out, choosing the relevant job and department, and then going through and, as a department manager, selecting the various relevant information. Now, depending on what's selected and what's entered on this form, could very well determine different paths within workflow that will be triggered, different tasks that will be triggered. So I'll submit this form. On submission, what will happen is it'll actually be recorded in FileBound as a new requisition and routed down workflow. So here we can see the form that you've just seen me fill out, and we've got all the relevant information there, some of which has been ported across into the metadata of the file itself, and then we can see that it's automatically been routed down workflow. So this is currently with the CEO to review the requisition. Now, obviously, they would look at the various options that have been selected and make their choice. In this case, they're going to approve it, where it goes back to the requester. So the system knows who the requester is. In this case, it's Max Headroom, who'd be the IT manager, and his role is to, in this case, advertise for the role, retrieve applications, and then whittle through those until he had a number of applicants that he was willing to interview. Now, I should say that, depending on your organisation's requirements, that advertising task could be sent to HR or whatever that might look like. It can be tailored. For the sake of the demonstration, Max would come in to fill out another eForm. So this one would be to confirm the applicants that he wanted to have interviewed. So we've got a couple of ex-cricketers here that have applied. We're going to upload a resume and submit that, and then we'll need to refresh this form. And now that it's refreshed, I can go and enter the second applicant. It could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 50. The point of doing this is to bring these applicants into the system, and you'll see once that's been entered there, we'll go up and I'll actually refresh this original staff requisition form, and when I do this, you'll see now Max and Tony's information has been brought in along with the documentation. So we've got the resume and the registration form. In addition to that, we've got some metadata down here reflecting each of the individuals. So after entering the various applicants, we would come through and, in this case, mark them as shortlisted. So what this is going to trigger when I click the button, and then I'll refresh the page, for the sake of the demonstration, you will see now we've also got an interview form for each of the applicants that's been created. So here's our interview form for Max. You can see we've got his data that's been merged in, the position that he's going for, and we've also got Tony's interview form, and here's his information that's been merged in. So going back to our routed form, I want to tell HR that, HR is saying that, Max is the selected candidate from the interviews. I could obviously, in this case, we've hypothesised, I could return that back up to the position requester and say, go and get some more applicants, neither of these are suitable, or whatever that process might look like in your organisation. We would certainly cater for that in workflow design. In this case, we're going to appoint Max as a new employee. So when I click on this button, this will actually conclude the requisition workflow. So we've got our no workflow items attached to this anymore. If I close this down and I go into the employees project and run a search on that, we can see all of our employees, and there's Max has had his employee file created, and in fact that's also been routed down now the onboarding workflow. So created this employee details form automatically. Workflow's taken care of that for us. And routed it down workflow. So we've also ported across any documents that Max had in his requisitions separator. So the interview form, his application form, the resume, anything else, could be qualification checks, could be security certification checks, whatever it is in your process when you're gathering a required documentation for an applicant, we bring that across into the employee file, obviously because that we're now talking about employee document life cycle. So you can see here we've got those in there. I kind of glossed over it before, but if I come back into the employees project and run a search, we can see here we've got all of our employees in there with various metadata. And we'd also have all the documents pertaining to the individuals over the time. Going back to our workflow, at this point in time, this is with HR, just to confirm that it's ready to be entered into the HRM platform, or it could be payroll, whatever that would look like. In this case, the requirement is an employee ID is entered. If it's not entered, then a check gets done when the workflow button's pressed, and if it's not entered, it'll come back in the document notes saying you need to enter the ID, or whatever the case might be. At this point in time, then HR would arrange the induction with the incoming new staff member and log that, and then confirm that it's been scheduled, and then we move on. So if I refresh the page now, because I've confirmed that we've scheduled the induction, we can see now I've got a couple of other documents that have appeared, one of which is the contract. So in this case, it was a permanent position, so we've got a permanent contract, and we can see Max's data's been merged into the document. We could merge all kinds of data that has been collected, like the commencement date or various duties or whatnot. One other document that's been created in this case is the induction checklist. So I go through and mark tasks that have been completed. Perhaps there's another session in the afternoon, and we come through and do the rest of the tasks, so they all get marked as completed. And then if we go back to our routed document, we would then confirm that the induction's complete. That concludes onboarding. Now, if I refresh this document, having completed the onboarding, that would kick off the probation workflow. So we've got a probation review form that's been created. I would come in this case, hypothetically, and enter the manager who's performing the probation review, and the date it is and the time it is. Once again, that'll be tailored to your organisation. We complete that form, and then dependent on the result, whether the probation was successful or unsuccessful, you would obviously choose that option. In this case, we went unsuccessful. If I refresh our file here, we'll now see that's kicked off the termination process. So once again, we've got a checklist of things that need to be done in order to successfully offboard a staff member. Now, these could be tasked out to various departments. So, IT could be tasked some assignments to retrieve laptops, shut down access to software or the network. Facilities could receive tasks to retrieve keys, change PIN numbers on doors, or whatever the case might be. So once this has been completed, we mark it completed, and thus endeth the process. If you'd like to know more, please contact us through sales@upsol.co.nz. We'll be in touch and help you with your requirements.